The lecture materials this week and the readings this week have focused on the idea that new media technologies have contributed to changes in social, political, and economic life. They focus on how these technologies have enabled individuals within society to take things within their own hands and to take control of situations which were usually controlled by authoritative figures or other members of government or large corporations. However, it does not only focus on this notion of a shift in control, but rather suggests that individuals within society are working collaboratively to share information and create new forms of social, political, and economic groups. Now, as Andrew mentioned within his lecture, an interesting example of how individuals are taking things into their own hands and reducing the need for a third party, such a government or a council, to get involved is through individuals posting on Facebook about their lost dogs and sharing information about their lost dogs, and then other users seeing this information and reporting back to those who have lost their dogs. Now, I can think of another example whereby members of society have reduced the need for a third party or a corporation to get involved in a communicative exchange. In recent years, there has been an increase in the amount of second-hand clothes being sold on social media sites. Individuals are now able to utilize forums such as Instagram and Facebook to sell and exchange clothes and speak directly to their buyer. This has led to a new form of communication and collaboration. This desire for direct communication between the buyer and the seller has led to a shift in business models and create a more collaborative economy. A specific example of this is the app Depop. Depop is a peer-to-peer shopping app which enables users to interact and negotiate with each other while simultaneously making profit through advertisements. New forms of digital communication have also contributed to a change in the political and social landscape. Social media sites such as Facebook and Twitter have contributed to a rise in political and social activism. This is due to the widespread nature of online communication, with these sites being instrumental in allowing the spread of political expression, the organizing of protests, and forming political groups. This online community behavior, in many instances, is then transferred offline. An example of when digital technologies have contributed to social and political activism was the establishment of the Black Lives Matter movement. This movement emerged due to the increased police brutality towards African Americans in the USA. Here, citizens employed the notion of surveillance, which is the idea of watching from below, through recording incidents of violence and police brutality towards African Americans. Citizens then streamed the incidents on social media websites, resulting in offline action, such as physical protests. Referring back to this notion of watching from below, traditionally, the spread of information employed a top-down approach due to access and power. However, the current media landscape has contributed to a rise in a bottom-up approach due to the ability for everyday citizens to become creators and publishers. However, digital and social media have not only allowed citizens to express their ideological opinions, but have also altered other aspects of the political landscape. Online forums have contributed to a shift in marketing and potential reach. Political candidates are now able to interact easier with their potential voters and share their day-to-day thoughts to a larger audience. This conveys the idea that governments, authoritative figures, and organizations are working collaboratively with social media platforms to adjust to our technological society, which is constantly developing. In my opinion, these social media websites have enabled citizens to obtain a certain amount of control over the political landscape. This is because potential candidates are able to hear the opinions and demands of wider audiences and in many instances younger generations, and in turn, they really have no excuse but to act. Although in many cases these governmental organizations won't act on injustice, I believe that social media places increased pressure for these authoritative figures to act without a large amount of backlash. So I feel for a lot of this podcast, I've been talking about a shift in power towards the everyday citizen or social media user and how they've challenged authority figures and or big industries. However, I'm just going to quickly talk about how digital media has enabled this new form of collaborative working. So there are various sites such as Google Docs and Wikipedia and Asana which employ this notion of collaborative working. Wikipedia is interesting as it allows different users around the world as well as the monitor to edit and publish content on the Wiki Encyclopedia, which definitely represents this form of collaboration of information. However, there are still some pages which are protected from potential vandalism and editing, although there are various sites or pages that you can still publish content on. Whilst the majority of this podcast is also concerned with the idea of users creating their own content and publish information, there's been developments in technology which allowed users or individuals to contribute to software design and developments. This is known as open source software and it enables anyone to change and distribute software for any purpose. So I'm just going to conclude my podcast here and say that new technologies and the third media revolution have caused a shift in power, making citizens become much more influential within political, social, and economic landscapes.